Now in today's video, we took the tail section of the MT09, took it off the motorcycle, showed in detail how to do that, got the part in prime, got the part in blue, and actually we kind of pushed it to the end of the day when the temperatures really got cold, but we did get all the clear on. The reason is the next 2 days after this it's supposed to be in very low teens, and having this part sitting in the garage and drying, what it's going to allow me to do is stay in a nice warm cellar tomorrow and buff the part out, maybe if it dries okay overnight. We're adding to our database of force drying the paint, and we share what we learn with you. So today, finally, it's not in the teens, it's in the 20s. Still cold out here. Still with the last 2 or 3 days, it has just been brutal. Anyway, today's project is I have the windshield ready to install. That all buffed out on yesterday's video, and it came out great. I'm waiting. It's not really sunny out there yet. I want to see if it gets sunnier, because the plan is I want to do a little photo shoot with the windshield on and all the parts together. Then, of course, you never know if the weather's going to play out or if Karen has something to do. Then when that's done and I have a photo shoot, I want to take the last piece of the tail section off and paint that blue. And if I get that, if the weather cooperates, the kids with their renovation, they may have some things we have to do today. You never know. But I don't like Groundhog Days, and my life has turned into a no groundhog life. But I really am happy with the way these frame pieces worked out. When I looked on the computer at how that looked, I'm very happy with the way. Actually, all the parts that we painted blue, I'm just super happy with. It seems like the general rule here is the more blue I can make, the more I can get rid of flat black and replace it with blue, the nicer the bike looks. And of course, the big thing with flipping battery tenders several times a day, one by one, keep all those lithium-ion batteries charged. And maybe that's the way this whole project is going to work out here, is that the more blue I seem to put on, I don't know, just me, I really do like, and I love this color blue, by the way. One thing about this color blue, under fluorescent lights, it looks very different than out in the bright sun, and it really has a nice little deep, just like the R1, very similar to the R1. Now, I didn't know right in the beginning if I was going to want to make these blue, so I decided the best way to do it is to take this off and paint it blue and then see if I like. And I'm thinking the more I look at this flat black, I think it'll look better blue. But again, all of these things, all the things I've modified on a bike are always in the eye of the beholder. Now, sometimes you go too far. In the case of the R1, I did go too far at one time. I had these pieces that are black right now. I had made them into carbon fiber pieces. I didn't like that look. And then I had made them blue. And then it was just too much blue and I didn't like it. So, but again, it's all in the eye of the beholder. And whenever I look at old videos where this piece here, this piece right here is painted green, the bike just didn't look to me the way I envisioned this. And I had put a lot of time into that restoration. That's a restoration, took a lot. That was back when I wasn't keeping track of hours. But having that piece black in there, to me, it just looks better. And some people in the beginning were kind of skeptical about the black, shiny black rims with the matching stripe to the Suzuki sticker. And when I got it all put together in a driveway, I couldn't have been happier. But that's the fun of motorcycling, is that you can do anything you want. And if it suits your fancy, go for it. So we have a plan to start the day, but that doesn't mean the day is going to play out the way we expect. There's this time of year, and with the stuff going on in our family, every day's an adventure. Okay, we've had enough coffee. It's time to go get that windshield installed. The goal today is, and it's a bright sunny day, I want to get some pictures. Boy, did that buff out beautifully. I want to get pictures of that on the bike, and then I want to pull the tail section of the bike apart, get that painted, because hopefully we'll have it ready to buff. After today, we have 2 days in the low teens. Now, I'm trying to take advantage of, I want to get some pictures while the sun is out, because we are coming up on 2 days where it's supposed to be in single digits. Not looking forward to that. I'd like to have the parts ready. What I've been trying to do is take pictures of this every step while I'm making the restoration, one step at a time. In the past, like with the FCR, I ripped the whole bike apart, and this I've been doing a little bit differently. Been doing it one step at a time. It's evolving little by little by little, and I like to look back at each one of the little modifications I've made and see how it coordinates with the others. Well, time to take it outside and get some pictures while the sun is shining, because there is some cold weather coming. Well, my first impression with the windshield is the bike looks a lot more finished than it did for sure with the nose section open. I do like it better even than with the carbon fiber parts I made before. I can't believe how nice the frame fillers fit right in there. That, another little upgrade. Now, the upgrade I want to make today is I want to paint these two little parts back here. And taking that apart, I've already done that already. In fact, there's a funny story goes along with that. I was looking to see, like on a Partzilla thing, where the last bolt was, and you really couldn't see on a Partzilla thing. I said, well, let me go look at when I did the tail tidy, and I've already done it on the tail tidy. I already put where all the bolts are and everything, so that was really handy. And every step of the way, I'm envisioning what it's going to look like with those silver wheels. That's the final thing, but I like to have some, well, just ordinary pictures, look at on my computer so I can decide what the next step is going to be. And to me, the look of this, the bike right now, as opposed to the day I brought it home, you hear the birds chirping? They're even agreeing with me. And the hardest part of the whole thing was getting that nose to look right. And I think having a painted windshield, well, I'm going to have the clear one soon too, the smoke one. So when I evil twin this out, and I'm already thinking about those silver wheels. But I don't want to rush. There's never a time I want to rush a job like this. So what I want to do is click off a few pictures and then pull that tail section apart. It looks like we got a real nice day to paint. And Karen only has a few errands today. And this is one of the things I try to do anytime I make any change, any realistic change to the bike. I look at it out in the driveway. I look at it. It really isn't sunny out there today, so you can't really see the sparkle in the paint or whatever. But I can get some rough idea as to how I like it. I see in this view how the windshield look from that view, and different things. The logo, I'm still trying to finalize that in my mind. How big to make it. John is helping me. And the windshield really made a big difference. I try to look at it from every possible angle. The polished exhaust was one of the things I really thought was worth all the time and effort. And when the windshield was black, yeah, it looked better, but I really like it in blue. The side of the radiators worked out great. That was one thing. But just looking at it from several different angles, a lot of times a motorcycle will look real good from one angle, and yet when you move up 10 feet or you turn or you look from the back or from the side or something. Now this bike has, because it's a modern bike, it's not like the other bikes in my collection that have more old-fashioned round headlights and big thick seats and everything. So I've kind of gotten used to the idea. I want to keep this looking like the factory made it. I don't want to make it a custom where people look at it and they don't know whether it's a Ducati or an Aprilia or what. I want it to be distinctly an MT09, but looking like maybe the factory really made those parts. Oh, the carbon fiber fender, the carbon hugger. And you don't notice it from far away. You don't notice it until you look real close. This bike has a lot of changes over a stock bike. If you were to park next to the bike the day I brought it home, I often think, and Scott made a good point out of that. You look at a picture of it the day I brought it home, and you look at it now, and you almost think that can't be the same bike. Well, I've worked on it relentlessly for a year and probably almost a year and a half now, and I'm closing in on having it pretty much looking like the way I want. But of course, the real final touch on this is going to be the logo and the silver wheels. Okay, I got all the photos I need for my computer, but I know the next step on this, and normally I would go down to the computer and start looking at what to do next. Well, we know we're going to take these two tail pieces off. Relatively simple job, and take advantage of what I think is going to be a really good painting day, and then hunker down for 2 days when it's really cold. Now it's pretty straightforward once you get the key in. It's a little bit difficult sometimes getting that key to sit right in there. Seat comes right off, step one. Now because we just had this apart, pretty straightforward. Underneath there's some pop, the things you have to press in the center to get out, and other than that there's just some pretty obvious screws where the screws are. And since we've done it before, it should be a pretty straightforward job to get the parts off. Under here are these pop rivets. They have to be popped and they can come out. I think there's 2 or 3, I'll check. Once that's off, these parts come off. Now there are 3 of these on each side, and for anybody not familiar with them, to take the part off you press that little tang in and this would come off. Now when you go to put it back, you've got to push this part so it's out. You would then take this, when we go to assemble a bike, push this piece back in, and when you push that, it spreads, it locks in place, and there are 3 of these on each side of the bike. So the final 2 screws here, these will come off, and I always lay the screws and those little clips out. In the sequence I take them apart, just makes it easier to put things back together. And when you loosen these last 2 screws, the problem is getting in here with a T-handle, difficult. Once I can break them loose, I use the ball end of the socket. In this case, the ball end socket is the easiest way to get these out. Now these are the parts we've already had off the bike. This is the part, and it's held on up here by a bolt. So let me put this away before I scratch it. Of course, one of the things I'm trying not to do is scratch the part. That's important. Important to me anyway. Now what's handy here is all the bolts you need, all the screws. You need 1 Allen wrench. In my case, I need a ball end because I can't get in that bottom one as conveniently as I'd like to. These all seem to come right out without a problem. And we'll have, well, there it is. And that's the part we're going to do a paint on. And we've got these little clips we've got to deal with. We've had to deal with them before to get that piece of screening out before we paint it. Relatively straightforward part of the job. Now on more complex jobs, it's handy to me to put the screws. This is the way I've taken them out, the clips, the screws, and the final screw, and the wrench I've used on a clean microfiber and the part. This would just, on a complicated job where the screws at different lengths and you need different wrenches, this seems to be a help when you're a backyard mechanic like I am. If you do this every day, you work for Yamaha or for Valentino Rossi, I guess you know ahead of time. But anyway, this is a habit I've gotten into as a backyard mechanic, and it's worked on my little motorcycle collection pretty well. Okay, one side is off, and we're ready to do the other side. So in a few minutes, we'll be inside. We'll have a nice hot cup of coffee, and then we'll get these parts cleaned up, sanded, and ready to paint. So this is a pretty straightforward thing, and I think it's pretty funny that if you look, and I've done it more than once, I've looked at something on YouTube to see where a screw is or how to do something, and I had already posted the video years ago, so I don't know. One of the things I've heard people say, hey, the videos are long. Well, you know what, I try not to leave out any steps, and there's been some really good videos that I've enjoyed watching, and I know that people don't do it on purpose, but they just assume everybody knows the stuff that you're watching a video to learn. And especially when it comes to this kind of paint work, or if you don't know where that last screw is and you can't find it on a Partzilla, the SKU, and you're trying to take a tank off, a gas tank is a good example of something. If you don't disconnect the wires and it's so easy. And thank you, YouTube. Thank you for everybody that contributes. Now here's a good example of why I say I don't want to leave out any steps. This little part, when we're painting it, I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. It goes on the end here. Of course, if I checked it, you know, I'd figure it out. But trying not to leave out any steps. This is a little piece of screening, very nice. And I've got to get a long, sharp knife and pry these up. And then we'll flatten them out, and when we put them back on, it'll go right back together. So this was pretty straightforward removal of the parts. So that went pretty well, very easy, and I always leave the tools I need out. When it comes time to put this back together, half an hour, 45 minutes, it'll be all back together. Didn't scratch any parts, didn't lose any screws. But that's a good little tip if you don't work on bikes, or if you don't work on the same bike every day. Now, time to get down to cellar where it's nice and warm. Alright, the coffee's brewing, now we can do some serious paint work. Now, the first thing I like to do when I have any parts I'm going to paint, whether they're my parts or somebody else's parts, I want to, of course, look and I want to examine every one of the tabs to see if anything is cracked. Anywhere where a screw or a fastener goes in. Simple reason, and it's really simple. If you don't fix it now, you paint everything and the crack gets worse. Well, it's easy to fix now because we're going to do all the sanding and painting and everything. So this will be a relatively easy. These look pretty good. In fact, I missed here in my errant ways. There's a fastener in each spot, the little blind nut. I will take those out and put them out where they belong. Well, maybe that's only on one. No, it's on both sides. See, when you're cold, you miss stuff like this. Anyway, and I'll pull these the little tangs off. But I wanted to show something real. This is an interesting thing. Has nothing to do with the paint job. If you look at this part here, this is the one that's on the side of the. Well, they both are. They're both covered with this. This is actually. Let me show it up close. This is pretty funny. What this is pieces of rubber. If you pick them up, you can see. Now, I was so skeptical when I got the Michelin 5 that I didn't think it would last out the season. Well, you know what? I got 10,000 on the bike, roughly 4,000, a little more than 4,000 on, and I'm not even halfway through the tire yet. But I'm going to put new tires on the bike when I put the rims back on and use them on another bike. But this is how soft that Michelin, it's the edge. The edge is really soft. And I'm not riding it like it's a track bike, but it is a super grippy tire. At least the one I have is. All right, though, the first thing is get these two parts. I've got to pull those little tabs off. Let me show them, get the blind nuts off. Just get a razor blade under there and pop them up. I don't want to damage the screens. And then we'll be ready to super clean the parts. Now these little press washers, I don't know, there's another word for them. If you just have an X-Acto knife or a sheetrock knife, you can get underneath there. When you go to put them back on, just press them on and they go right back. But we want to get that screen out of there before we clean the parts. I don't want that screen to get all gouged up. Okay, so with the screening out of the way and the little press washers out of the way, and my fault, I should have definitely, definitely taken that and left it out in the garage. Next time I go out to the garage, I'll put it out there. I like to keep all those little parts, you know, even though I have spares, that I don't like that the mouse eats them. And anytime I try to help somebody paint something, the hardest thing to convince them is that one of the big major parts of the job, not a little thing, just take a damp cloth and wipe it down. A big part of the job is getting the parts clean, inside and out. Even the parts you don't see. Because what happens if you don't do it? You're holding a part, you're touching it while you're sanding, and all that grit and rubbish from the road and dead bugs and everything, they're working their way into your paint job. Now, in this case, this is the part we're going to see. So it's really important. Well, I'm trying to evaluate. Yeah, this we see, we're going to see down there. The bottom here we're going to see. We're actually going to see a lot of it. So now I also thought and I didn't know how this is going to play out. I don't know if the bottom here is going to look better because the road grime is going to be on here, of course. If maybe I'll, at the end of this, put it together and not like it and then come out and paint this black. Flat, I hate to say that word, flat black. I hate flat black. Anyway, cleaning this up. Biggest part of the job, simple green. I've used Crud Cutter, but Crud Cutter works so good on my shower door that I left the Crud Cutter up by the shower. And Dallas, that stuff really does, the degreaser you can buy in Lowe's called Crud Cutter. Dallas turned me onto it. It is some good stuff. Like, it's in our favor here that these parts were molded. The parts that we're going to see actually have a texture. They've molded in like a little bit of a sandblast texture, they'll be in our favor, so they'll just need a minimum of sanding. That's really in our favor, and I don't want to lose that texture, because that'll let the primer get a good bite. And we're going to have to use a sealer primer on these parts. There's no paint at all on them. This is the way they come out of the mold. Now, don't think for a minute Yamaha wouldn't like to paint these. You know what? It's cheaper for them to make it and have that little flat black texture in there. I get that. No secret why they like to make bikes flat black, but I like them shiny. So we're going to use 400 Indasa, some soapy water, and this should just get us enough of a scuff on those parts. It really is in our favor that those parts aren't mirror smooth. See, if we were painting this part, you paint over that, almost guaranteed the paint's not going to stick. But how convenient, because they wanted to make it look flat. You know, they know that they know that young people, this is in style. Everybody wants to have flat black this and flat black that, and it's cheap for them to make it. If being shiny was in style, the bikes would be more expensive. So maybe this is in our favor. So it's only really important that we get the spots, and I know the spots that we're going to see here, pretty obvious, and I don't want to sand them perfectly smooth. I just want to add to that little etch that they have. This will be a very short job. It shouldn't take a lot of time at all, but it'll make for, I'm sure, a much nicer part when we're done. Now, sanding over that flat texture, and it's a texture that they have actually in a molded part, and that makes it look flat. I was trying to be careful not to make it too smooth, and I definitely don't want to make it shiny, that's for sure. It's 400 grit sandpaper, so at the end, it definitely looked dull. Now here's a tip you can put right in the bank. When you're going to wipe this down with M600, don't use a paper towel. Anytime you have this, I'll call it this rough surface, what happens, the paper towel leaves little fuzz or lint or whatever you want to call it on it. I use it, this is old material that I have just for this purpose. I save old bed sheets and old, anything that doesn't leave lint. And this is I think a pillowcase or something, but that'll minimize the amount of little schmutz that's in the paint. Just make it one little bit nicer, and we're actually almost ready to prime, and it is a beautiful day out there. Here, our parts are ready. It's a beautiful day. We got to go get our primer ready and make some handles. I guess this will be easy. We got a lot of tabs to hold us on. Anytime we paint plastic, the thing is to use a primer sealer, not just a primer, and not just a self-etching primer, a primer sealer. Duplicolor, Rust-Oleum both make good product. And this is, anytime I've used this on plastic, I've had really good results. And one of the things, use a brand new can and shake the can till you think it's done, and then shake it about a minute more, and you'll have really good results. Now I was hoping the sun would stay out for the part of the job where I'm painting the clear and painting the blue. It doesn't matter on the prime. The prime you could paint in the dark. But anyway, a lot of times when you're painting primer over plastic, it'll look like there's all little hairs growing up off the plastic part. All you need to do if that happens, it didn't happen on this part, so I couldn't show it. Just let it dry. If you have to, put it away for an hour or two. Sand it with some 400 and put another coat of primer on, or even a third coat. But you don't want to see any hairs in the primer when you paint the blue. The heat is drying that primer up, and by half an hour, 45 minutes, we'll be ready to paint the blue. So I'll mix that batch of blue up. Yeah, that's looking good. And if I see any imperfections in there, all I have to do is sand with some 400 or 600 and repair what there are no imperfections. So it looks pretty good. And we'll be ready to paint blue very soon. Less than an hour. And believe me, you can look on, just put this word in on YouTube for a search, CROMAX. A lot of good painting info for painting stuff, painting cars, everything. There's some really good tutorials out there. Of course, they're professional people and they're getting paid. So, and this is the custom paint. It's CROMAX. It's a 50-50 mix. And Dennis, thank you. That's a very nice match. I didn't think it would be that good, but it's really good. That CROMAX Blue is just a beautiful paint to work with. It's pricey for sure, and custom mixing it doesn't make it any cheaper, of course, but it covers beautifully. It's a really good match, and it goes right over the primer. Now, that primer has been sitting up by a heating vent. I was wondering, you know, I've been experimenting with this forced drying primer and forced drying paint, and trying to become a little more modern using this modern equipment, but I'm learning little by little, and it's working. Well, after a coffee break, they're up by the heating vent drying. We're ready to mix up the clear. Boy, what a day to paint. This turned out to be a great day. Too bad tomorrow and the next day are going to be so cold. This is the clear we're going to use, and thank you, Joe Padula, for donating this to our cause. Left over from the Ducati repair from last year. But hopefully we'll be buffing this out tomorrow and when it's 11 degrees outside. I'll be in the house buffing, so get this mixed up. Here's the numbers. I want to make sure I get the numbers on there. I'm pretty sure he bought that off the internet. Now, just in the time I was painting it clear, it was starting to cloud up and get really cold. And we lost our beautiful part of the afternoon where normally it would be a little bit sunnier and a little bit warmer and whatever. But as always, the name of the game is to tough it out, get everything sprayed, get it into the garage, check out that part 1 is drying, how it's coming out. Paint was laying down beautifully, so no reason now not to get our full 2 coats of clear on the parts. And even as I'm spraying here, I was thinking, maybe I should go put a coat on. I don't know. Maybe the Eskimo blood is starting to come to the surface here. I don't know. Anyway, we got the 2 coats on, and they look great. Well, toward the end of this day, the temperature dropped way down, dropped like a stone. I'm real happy to have those parts in here drying now. Even though it's going to get really cold, we might have to let them sit up there for an extra day by the heating vent tomorrow. We have to play that by ear. But once they're buffed out, we put it all back together, and we'll do another photo shoot. Well, I'm glad I got to this point today because we're going to lose the weather. In fact, we're losing it already. The temperature's just plummeting here. Glad I got this done today. I got these little screens to look at. I wanted to see, and I'm not sure. I might want to paint them silver. I might want to paint them blue or put them back the way they are. I don't know until I buff those parts out. And I don't know if that's going to have to dry an extra day because we're in this really severe cold right now. But either way, we're going to try to learn something. And most of all, we're going to try to pass it on to you. So later in the day, the way this played out, the kids came over with Miles, and Miles reminded me of something that we haven't used the trains upstairs. We have a giant O-gauge train layout in the attic of the house. And I said, how would you like to see video of you when you were 2 years old? Oh, yeah. Let me see. I don't want to watch those motorcycles anymore. So when I dug through the video, I found this little beautiful video clip of Miles when he was 2 years old. We used to go on run the trains every day. Now, I really mean this. In all the time when Miles was growing up, I shot hours and hours of video of him playing with his Thomas the Train. And we kind of got into, we made a model railroad in his bedroom. Then we eventually made a bigger model railroad in the cellar. And he loved trains for probably a period of 5-6 years. Every time he was here, we would run the trains. And we had so much fun with this. And I'm so glad I shot this video, so glad I took the pictures. We used to spend time down at the train station. I'd put them on my shoulders. When we went to Cape Cod, we went down and took a ride on the train, the scenic train that they take you 2 or 3 hours around Cape Cod. It's wonderful. Video is such a wonderful thing. Of all the people that have ever lived ever, from the Romans, the Greeks, to whoever. We are the only generation that's been able to capture our children and our grandchildren on video like this, and our passions, the motorcycle passion. I had a giant passion for many, many years for model railroading, and I still have a passion for it. I still love model airplanes. I still wish I had an air coupe, and I wish I had another Sutphen boat. But you know what? I'm so glad I did these things when I was able to do them, and I'm so glad I was able to preserve the memories on video and share it with you. So if you enjoyed the video, I hope you share it with your friends, and of course I hope, most of all, that we'll see you tomorrow. And thanks again for watching.